What are some ridiculous history facts? Hi Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will leak your secrets. Montenegro technically was in war with Japan for 101 years and they signed a peace treaty in 2006. Montenegro was allied with Russia in Russo-Japanese War and they declared war on Japan, but they forgot to peace. Not the only time this happened in history, the Scilly Islands were at war with the Netherlands for quite a while, if I recall correctly. 1904 Olympic Marathon in St. Louis. The number 1 finisher drove most of the race. He started the race, got tired and heat exhausted and wanted to drop out. He got in a car to DQ himself and head back to the stadium, but along the way realized he was near the finish line and got out to claim the glory. The number 2 finisher was carried across the finish line by his trainers. On a bogus pseudoscience theory, the trainers had been giving him a mixture of brandy, egg whites, and rat poison, instead of water. When it came out that the number 1 finisher had driven most of the course, this guy was given the gold despite the help from his trainers to finish. For some reason, the number 3 finisher was just a regular guy who did nothing unusual. In this case, ordinary was extraordinary. The number 4 finisher was a Cuban mailman who had raised the money to attend the Olympics by running around his entire country and asking for donations. When he landed in New Orleans, he lost all the money gambling. He managed to scrounge enough to get to St. Louis and attend the Olympics. However, he had no money for athletic gear, so he ran in dress shoes and pants hacked off at the knee by a fellow racer who happened to have a knife. He probably would have come in first had it not been for the hour-long nap he took on the side of the road after eating rotten apples he found at an orchard near the course. The number 9 and number 12 finishers were from South Africa and ran barefoot. South Africa didn't actually send a delegation. These were students who just happened to be in town and thought it sounded fun. Number 9 was chased a mile off course by angry dogs. Half the participants had never raced competitively before. Some died. St. Louis only had 1 water stop on the entire run. This, coupled with the dusty road, and exacerbated by the cars kicking up dust, led to several fatalities. The Russian delegation arrived a week late, because they were still using the Julian calendar until 1918, while effectively the rest of the world had switched to the Gregorian calendar. This was the most early 1900s thing I've ever read in my entire life. Every sporting event in the early 1900s was basically an episode of Wacky Races. In ancient Egypt, servants were smeared with honey to attract flies away from the pharaoh. That's so dumb. Why not just put the honey on a statue or something? I mean, you'd still need servants to carry the statue around, so just skip the middleman. I'm imagining this was for when they were out and about. Just think of all the honey Trapmen you would have put out of a job. Colombia has a period in history literally called the dumb homeland period because of how incredibly dumb politicians acted at the time. How long ago? 180 years more or less. But yes, some say it never stopped. At one time there was not only a pope and an antipope, but also a counter-antipope. If a pope and an antipope meet, do they annihilate each other? The first bomb dropped on Berlin by the British during World War II claimed no human casualties, but it did kill an elephant. Never forget. The Battle of Bull Run, during the American Civil War, was called the Picnic Battle because so many civilians from Washington went on picnics on the sidelines and watched. But once the battle actually started, and the Union started to get its ass kicked, they all ran away, running over injured soldiers and dead bodies and generally disrupting the battle. This was actually a relatively common thing during the Civil War. I know it happened at Gettysburg too. Freaking tourist. War tourism is big business. It also happened at the Battle of Watling Street in the year 61. The Iceni were so confident they would defeat the Romans, they gathered round in their wagons to watch. When they were routed and had to fall back, the wagons blocked their path, and that's how Boudicca was defeated. I thought the wagon thing was pretty standard for Celtic migratory war parties. Families stand behind the line so that the warriors know retreat isn't an option. Claudius Drusus died in AD 20 from asphyxiation when he tossed a pear in the air and caught it in his mouth. The pear tree was put on trial, found guilty of murder, and destroyed. 2 important questions. How large was this man's throat? How small was this pear? It might not be true. Suetonius tells us this story and he lived more than 50 years after Claudius Drusus died. It's also totally possible that he was actually murdered by a man named Sejanus, who was a pretty notorious figure in the early empire. We will probably never know what really happened to him. A lot of high-profile deaths surrounding the royal family, for lack of a better term, from around this time that have wacky stories behind them, or at least there are suspicions, and there were suspicions at the time that their deaths weren't entirely natural. Heirs to the throne under Augustus and Tiberius had a habit of dying young. When the Romans laid siege to Themyscira, a real place weirdly enough, they attempted to tunnel into the city. The Themyscirans released bears into the tunnels. Thus Tunnelbear was invented. Themyscira. Bruh, ain't that Wonder Woman's hometown? Yeah, it totally was. Weirdly, a lot of Greek myths tell you real locations where myths happened. And their myths about the Amazons gave them a specific real city to base them in, which later the Romans conquered. Common feature of ancient mythology, actually. There are tons of gods and such that supposedly lived in places that are absolutely real. When the Netherlands was occupied by Renaissance in 1940, many people fled to Canada, including Princess Juliana of the Netherlands and her husband Prince Bernhard of Lippe-Biesterfeld. Their daughter, Princess Margriet, was born in Ottawa. Not knowing if the baby would be male, and hence the heir to the throne, Canada declared the maternity ward of the Ottawa Hospital extraterritorial, which means it became international territory. This meant that the baby would derive its nationality only from its mother, making it 100% Dutch. I'm writing a paper on this for uni right now. The Dutch still send thousands of tulip bulbs to Ottawa as a thank you every year, and as a result Ottawa has its own tulip festival. Margriet's older sister, Beatrix, was born in the Netherlands, but obviously came along with the family to Ottawa during the war. In school she was called Trixie Orange by her Canadian classmates. She was from the Dutch royal house of Orange-Nassau. I've always liked that detail. She grew up to become Queen of the Netherlands. My wife and I eloped to Ottawa, we're American, and coincidentally ended up naming our daughter Beatrix Alice. Alice is my mother-in-law's name. The Dutch version of Alice, Olge, was my great-great-grandmother's name. She moved here from Holland with my great-great-grandfather in 1892, after having just been married in a village in Winsum, Netherlands. I have a copy of the wedding certificate. The Dutch keep great records. The Nazis used that to their advantage when looking for Jews and other ethnicities in the Netherlands during the war. Frick those guys. And they stole thousands of Dutch bikes when they fled the country, even ones that had wooden wheels due to the rubber shortage during the war. What's more Dutch than goddamn wooden bike tires? Decades later, when Beatrix ended up marrying a German, it kinda pissed the Dutch off, and a common slogan at the time was Eerst mijn fiets terug, or first I want my bike back. This is fun. I could do it all day, but I should get back to work. That's why the Netherlands send tons and tons of tulip bulbs to Canada every year. They're planted all around the city of Ottawa, and in the spring the city celebrates the Tulip Festival. There are tulips of all kinds and colors all over the place. We've also named an entire hospital, in Toronto, after the princess. Ancient Romans would put sandals on the hands of sleeping people, then tickle their face so they would slap themselves. Ancient Romans were always up to summit. Because urine contains ammonia, a powerful bleaching agent, ancient Romans used to wash their clothes in pee. At many street corners there were public urinals that men could use, and their contents were collected every day and brought to the laundries. At US President Andrew Jackson's funeral in 1845, his pet parrot had to be removed because it was swearing. The Spartans never built a city wall, figuring that their reputation alone would mean no one would dare attack them. But during the Persian War, the Persians, who had already burned Athens twice, hired a Greek guide to take them to Sparta. But when they got there, They saw a kinda crap looking city without even a wall. They figured there was no way this place could be the mighty Sparta they had heard so much about. So they figured the Greek was lying and thus Sparta was spared. I think there is also a story about a guy walking up to a Spartan soldier and asking him where do the borders of Sparta reach, and the soldier responded about here, gesturing to the end of his spear. Sparta was such an interesting experiment in bravado, bravery, and the strength to back it. This is Sparta. Now that the popularity of this thread has died down, I just wanted to thank all those that gilded my comments. Much appreciated. No, this is madness. A Chinese emperor escaped an assassin by running around a pillar. After 2 hours, the assassin got bored and went home, and wasn't charged for his crimes. He actually didn't get away. Jing, the assassin, failed in the attempt. The emperor ran around the pillar until he had an opportunity to draw his sword out of his extraordinarily large and unpractical robes to then injure the leg of Jing. After this, the emperor got enough distance to Jing so that the guards could imprison him. There was a no weapon near the emperor policy, so the guards didn't dare to come closer to rescue him. There was a no weapon near the emperor policy, so the guards didn't dare to come closer to rescue him. Kinda like that if you are late, you get the death penalty, general, which instead decided to revolt. Just imagine. 20 minutes in, the assassin knows he looks ridiculous running around the same pillar this whole time, but he's kind of committed at this point. Besides, how much stamina could an emperor have, anyway? 40 minutes in, the assassin is wondering how much time an emperor has for CrossFit each week. An hour in, the assassin still running in circles trying to catch the emperor, all the while thinking this is so stupid. This is so goddamn stupid. He is beginning to wonder if he was given this mission as a prank. 90 minutes in, the assassin knows with horrible certainty that, whether he succeeds or fails, he is going to be the laughingstock of the whole empire. 2 hours in, both he and the emperor are still wheezing their way around the pillar. The assassin is not only tired and completely humiliated, but also realizes that he's in no shape to be able to run away after the assassination now, and figures his best bet is to give up and hope the emperor sees the humor in the whole situation. At some point they both have to be wondering where the frick the guards are. Like, no, the assassin was spared. The emperor was probably too busy purging the entire royal guard. Okay Reddit guys, subscribe now, or I will leak your secrets.